So in my previous video, I gave you an overview of the book of Revelation in the Bible, and how it promises to be, a prediction about the future, though admittedly an unspecified future. It says, it describes the things that will shortly take place, but shortly is a relative term, especially if you're God, then 2,000 years for a human might actually be a short time for God. So that's a relative term. But anyway, it talks about the future. That much is clear. Well, at least it says it does, right? So I gave you an overview about that and about the book, and about how the symbolism, or some of its symbolism, works. Because obviously, I also explained why any book about the future sort of has to be symbolic, right? Because if it isn't, then it just plainly tells about the future in a way that everyone can understand, then the future isn't going to happen, because everyone knows, so this horrible calamity is going to happen, so we better, do this and that to avoid it, right? So obviously it can't use plain language, but has to use symbolism. And I talked about how that symbolism works and gave you some examples of that. But I also explained that ultimately I don't think it refers to the examples I gave you in the last video, and said that ultimately I think it refers to communism. And now I'm going to talk about why I think that the book of Revelation in the Bible is actually warning people about communism. I know it sounds far-fetched, but and I've received a lot of ridicule for that. I made similar videos like 20 years ago, and not even initially it wasn't even videos. It was just, me reading the Bible and telling my friends, hey, this is what I think it talks about. And everyone was laughing at me, and then, I made some video, some very careful videos about it, and everyone was still laughing at me. And so then I didn't talk about it for like 20 years. And, but I think now people are more more receptive towards talking about such matters and such spiritual things, because naturally, if you don't believe in God and if you don't believe in the Bible, then of course you're gonna laugh at it. If you don't believe John had a vision from God about the future, then you're gonna laugh at any interpretation, right? Because you don't believe in any of the interpretations to begin with, right? But I already gave you a bunch of interpretations, and they all have merit. And I'm not saying, this is exclusive. I'm not saying only my interpretation is right. And I'm not saying that only one interpretation can be right, why can't the others be right as well? I mean, that's just, in my opinion, that just validates that there's something to it, right? This isn't, this isn't just something that someone made up, but this is actually something that has a lot of inner meaning, right? So in the previous video, I already explained, this is the key symbolism here, and everyone knows that about the 666. And I already explained that, and it has, it has three parts. So it's not only the number, 666 is just the number of the beast, but there isn't just the number of the beast. There is also the name of the beast and the symbol of the beast. And I already gave you an example with Islam. And of course, the symbol of the beast is a pentagram. I already explained that because, if you look at it from this angle, it represents a man. And if you look at it from this angle, it represents a beast, just like it says in Revelations that it represents both a man and a beast. So I'm pretty sure this is the symbol of the beast, and a lot of people agree with that. Not the symbol of Islam. I'm just talking about the pentagram, the 5-pointed star, which is the same as a pentagram. I'm not talking about the moon, but in my previous video, I talked about how the number, well, if you write out 666 in Greek, and the New Testament was written in Greek. If you write, and I explained that in my previous video, if you write 666 out in Greek, it looks like a part of the Shahada, and a lot of Muslim extremists actually carry that part of the Shahada on their forehead. They have those bandanas with on their forehead, so they unknowingly carry the number 666 written in Greek on their forehead, because in the Bible it again says that they have that on their forehead, and Islam also has the 5-pointed star. But I said it's not about Islam, it's about communism. Well, because communism also has the 5-pointed star, and they also have it on their forehead. Yeah, short break. Is that Mao? I think that's Mao. I'm not entirely sure. Huh. Okay, let's just call him Mao. Well, this is pretty much what Mao looks like as well, and what Mao was wearing. But of course, the point of communism is that they all wear the same. So from the uniform, you can't tell the difference because they all wore the same uniform, and everyone had to wear that uniform. Yeah, so as you can see, this is just the most typical communist uniform. That is the Chinese variant. But all communist uniforms, and in China, not just soldiers had to wear that. Everyone had to wear a uniform like that, at least, during certain times, especially during the Cultural Revolution. Everyone was wearing that sort of uniform, not just soldiers. Everyone basically had to wear that uniform. And, because everyone is supposed to be equal and so on, everyone was wearing the exact same kind of uniform. So, from Mao Zedong down to your typical peasant, everyone was wearing that uniform. And as you can see, it has the 5-pointed star on the forehead. And this is not only, just a feature of the Chinese uniform of the Communist Party. Every communist uniform, or pretty much every communist uniform, has the 5-pointed star at the forehead. Yeah, so that fits in pretty well with what the Book of Revelation says about the mark of the beast being worn at the forehead, and how it symbolizes a man and a beast at the same time. I already talked about the 5-pointed star, that it has that feature of representing both a man and a beast, and they wear it on their forehead. And well, communism, or rather socialism is a state economy. So a state economy in this case means that the Communist Party is in control over the entire economy. So without the Communist Party, you really cannot buy and sell, just like it says in the Book of Revelation, that no one can buy and sell without that symbol, because in a communist country, everyone has to follow the Communist Party, and everyone has to wear, a uniform like that, at least, during times where the control of the party is very intense, like the Cultural Revolution. During the Cultural Revolution, everyone was wearing a uniform like that, not just soldiers. And since the party had control over the entire economy, without the Communist Party, you really couldn't buy and sell anything. That's the whole point of having a state-run, party-controlled economy. That's what socialism is. But who is the beast then, right? Because it talks about the number of the beast, the sign or symbol of the beast, and the name of the beast. But who is the beast? Well, to understand that, we have to understand who the Red Dragon is, because it says here that the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. So to understand who or what the beast is, we have to understand who the Red Dragon is. That's introduced in the previous chapter in Revelation 12, where it talks about the Red Dragon. And again, this obviously isn't meant to be taken literally. No one is saying that one day you're going to walk down the street and there's going to be a literal red dragon, and breathing fire at you. It's symbolical. So what does the red dragon represent? Well, if we're going to go with the interpretation of it representing communism, then it's obvious, isn't it? And actually, the color red is emphasized a lot in Revelation. Also later on, it talks about Babylon, the whore. Again, this obviously isn't referring to Babylon because, again, this was written at a time when Babylon wasn't a thing anymore anyway, so it couldn't, actually be referring to the actual Babylon. If you ask me, I think it's referring to Beijing, but okay, this is far-fetched, I know. But it also talks about, it being a city, where the people of the world come to do business. And then all of a sudden, the merchants of the world cannot do business with Babylon anymore. And I think this fits in very well with Beijing or with China in general, and you can already see that happening now. A lot of people, a lot of big companies throughout the world were doing shady dealings with China, and now increasingly they have lost that, or they are in the process of losing that business, and it's all going down the drains, and they can't make money with China anymore, so they're all very unhappy. And this is exactly what Revelation talks about, but that comes up in the in the next chapters. So we're not going to read that because it would get too long, but suffice it to say, you can interpret it that way. It makes sense, because it emphasizes the merchants no longer, the merchant. Well, it exactly talks about the situation with the merchants in the world today. It's very, they're in exactly that kind of situation that Revelation talks about later on. So I think it's not too far-fetched to say that Babylon is referring to Beijing. It fits. And it also sounds similar. And of course, Babylon cannot refer to the actual Babylon because at the time this was written, the actual Babylon already didn't exist anymore. So again, obviously this is symbolic. And again, I feel like the symbolism fits. But, back to the Red Dragon. The reason I say the symbolism fits is because it all fits then, then the symbol fits, the red star, and the red dragon, it's obvious who that is then, it's symbolical for the Communist Party, and and the other symbolism, it all fits together. All, if it would just fit in one or two cases, then I would say, okay, yeah, maybe coincidence. But if all of them fit and all of them fit together and complement each other, then I think we're onto something here, right? So I think the dragon refers to the Chinese Communist Party, and they really are actually using the Red Dragon as their symbol, and they see it in a positive way, as you can see in this example, of an art exhibition, a Welsh visual arts exhibition. Yeah, but it's in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Chongqing, four very big cities in China. So I don't know what this has to do with Welsh. Nothing. But as you can see, when they do celebrations and so on, they always kind of represent themselves as a red dragon. I'm talking about the Chinese Communist Party. They really are using the red dragon as a sort of mascot for themselves in a positive way. And of course, they're referring to a Chinese dragon, so they see it as something positive. They say like, yeah, there's actually even this propaganda song. A Chinese propaganda song put out by the Communist Party. And it has one line in it that goes like, oh, the Red Dragon isn't bad, the Red Dragon is good, and the Chinese Communist Party is good, and so on. One of those typical propaganda songs where they repeat over and over again how good the Communist Party would be, like, 共产党好，共产党，中国的共产，what does it say? It's like, yeah, well, that's another propaganda song. They have a lot of propaganda songs that just consist of repeating over and over again that the Communist Party would be good. And in some of them, they really are saying, they really are actually associating themselves with the Red Dragon and saying the Red Dragon is good. So it's not even me who's saying, that the Red Dragon is a symbol for the Chinese Communist Party. It's actually the Chinese Communist Party itself that associates itself with the Red Dragon. So when you keep what I just said in mind, and when we then again read this passage, Revelation 13, which I already read in the previous video, but now we're going to read it again, and I think now we can make sense of it. So, then I stood on the sand of the sea. Oh, by the way, the beast from the sea. Well, again, this might be referring to a city. This might be referring to Shanghai, because that's basically what Shanghai means. And then we could also associate the head of the Chinese Communist Party, or one of the heads of the Chinese Communist Party, with the number 666, because again, in Chinese you can very easily associate a character with a number simply by the number of strokes. And a certain head of the Chinese Communist Party that persecuted a lot of Christians, but also a lot of other religious minorities who just, simply persecuted a lot of religions. Well, his name actually consists of 3 sixes. If you write it in Chinese, each character has 6 strokes, and he comes from Shanghai, which is associated with, it means, what does it exactly mean? Something with sea and something with an animal that lives there. Something along those lines. So again, you can make that connection. So I'm just mentioning this because I feel that once you see it in that light, it all comes together. It all makes sense. Every symbolism points to that. Let's read it again in that, just generally in that light. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. Okay, keep in mind that the point here is that I think this is all referring to communism, right? Leopard. So now we can make sense of what the leopard means. It says it's like a leopard. And it goes on, well, it also talks about a bear, but, what would you associate with a bear? Russia. I do. I don't really know why, but for some reason when I think of a bear, I think of Russia. I'm getting to that. It will make sense in a second. And it says, that bear/leopard, one of his heads had a mortal wound, and the mortal wound was healed. Okay, so I think, keeping with the theme of thinking that this might maybe refer to communism, I think this is referring to the Soviet Union. You have the bear, which I associate with Russia, and you have, the Soviet Union collapsed, right? And everyone thought, hey, the Soviet Union is gone, communism is defeated, communism is no more. Mortal wound. But, surprise, communism is not gone. Communism is back. It's back in China, but it's also back everywhere. Well, it never left China. But it's making a comeback all around the world. Just like it says in Revelation. That everyone all over the world is worshipping it. Who's, not everyone, but, basically a lot of bad people do, right? So it's making essentially that point. The Soviet Union collapsed, but the Red Dragon recovered from its mortal wound, and even though the Soviet Union collapsed, communism, the ideology, maybe not communist regimes, but the ideology, is being worshipped by a lot of young people all around the world nowadays, even though we thought communism would have collapsed. But it didn't. So obviously this is referring to the Soviet Union. And now the leopard makes sense. Take a globe. Well, obviously a globe, from the time of the Cold War, and look at the Soviet Union. What do you see? You see a leopard. The Soviet Union, the country of the Soviet Union is in the shape of a leopard. Here you can see it on a map. This is actually the Soviet Union and Russia. But actually, this way it looks even more like a leopard. So, yeah, Russia looks even more like a leopard. So, yeah, it's, same thing, really. And it's especially in Russia, actually, that communism has a comeback thanks to let's not get into this. For various reasons, there is a comeback of communism in Russia. Yeah, very much so. And it looked like, in the 90s, it looked like communism was dead in Russia, or everywhere, really. But it made a comeback. And as you can see, it really does look like a leopard. You see, a tiny bit of, use your imagination, but you don't need to use it too much. You can see how it looks like. You can see how you can you know how it looks like a leopard, how it can look like a leopard, especially if you look at it on a globe, it looks even more so. Um, so okay, you have to use a bit of imagination, but you can see here's the head, and here you have a paw and another paw, and yeah, it looks like a leopard. It does. But let's read on. Um, the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" Again, if you see it in light of communism, this sentence makes sense. Who is able to make war with him? That's what a lot of people asked, especially at the beginning of the Cold War. It seemed like, communism was very powerful. The Soviet Union, the Leopard, was very powerful. And they wondered, who can fight with it. Even today, people wonder, who can fight with North Korea or China. Well, mainly China, North Korea. Okay, North Korea has nukes, but North Korea isn't too big. But China is, wants to be a superpower, and everyone's asking, who can defeat China, or who could defeat China if, well, obviously there's a lot of conflict going on, and right now there's sort of a war between India and China, and a whole lot of other countries as well. So everyone is asking, right, who can defeat it, And especially during the Cold War, it would be very difficult to defeat the communist bloc, and because it was the Cold War, everyone was wondering exactly that, and was wondering, hey, the communist bloc is so powerful, who can defend against that, who is powerful enough to go to war against it, right? That's exactly what people wanted. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. Oh no, we're not there yet. And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. Again, you can see how this can, apply to communism. Communism is an atheist ideology. I don't know how familiar you are with Marx's writings. Maybe I should do another video about Marx's writings. But Marx makes it very clear in his writings that, well, he is an atheist, and that communism is an atheist ideology. Lenin actually made that even clearer. And all communist regimes throughout history have made a point to eliminate religion, to persecute Christians, to persecute all religions, and to eliminate religions. They have always made that one of their main priorities, if not their number one priority. Most of the time that was actually their number one priorities: persecuting religions, persecuting Christians, persecuting clergies. They've always done that. Yeah. And, they've always attacked religions. They always, in doing so, they've always blasphemed God. Yeah, exactly like it says here. So again, it makes sense. Everything makes sense. So I think, I'm not saying that, that this is it. I'm just saying it's interesting, isn't it? And if you see it in that light, it's interesting. You get and it fits. It all fits together. It's interesting. Yeah. And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. Again, we already talked about that. The Soviet Union, the Leopard, had a mortal wound, and it looked like it was defeated. But again, communism pops up all over the world, at least as an ideology, especially nowadays. A lot of young people believe in it all over the world. So it's not just in Russia, not just in China, not just in communist countries, whether they be, communist countries now or former communist countries. Even in countries that have never been communist countries, like the US, a lot of people believe in communist ideology, and a lot of communists try to gain power even in those countries. So yes, it's like it says, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And keep in mind, it talks about the Red Dragon, right? So the Red Dragon, communism, was given power over every tribe, tongue, and nation, and that's the case. They're not all official communist countries, but you can see that the influence is very strong. So yeah, it fits. And a lot of young people worship communism. Yes, of course today we wouldn't say worship anymore, because communists have already destroyed faith, pretty much, right? Just like it said it would. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Again, if you see it in the light of communism, it makes sense. Like I said, communist regimes persecute Christians, persecute Christianity, persecute all religions, and persecute religious believers, lead them into captivity, kill them. But it tells, those who are being persecuted for their faith in communist countries, it gives them hope. It tells them, don't despair, because all those who are doing those things, those who persecute you, those who imprison you, all their bad deeds will come back to them. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Since we were talking about the Soviet Union and Russia, I was already hinting at it, but I didn't want to say it. But now I have to say it, because this really sounds like Putin, doesn't it? It does sound like Putin. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. So the first beast, the Soviet Union, it looked like it was killed, right? But then it came back. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, So it's someone who, he obviously, if it's referring to communism, then, him looking like a lamp could refer to him not openly, him not openly preaching communism. Someone who doesn't, who might have been a communist in the past during the Soviet Union, but who now claims to have abandoned communism. Because like we said, it looked like the Soviet Union was defeated. But surprise, surprise, he looks like a lamp, but speaks like a dragon. I think this could refer to Putin, right? It does, and especially if you keep in mind that dragon refers to communism, So yes, he looks like a lamp. He looks like he likes to, he likes to make himself look like a democratically elected leader. But what he says is in line with communism, right? Or a lot of what he says is, and a lot of his tactics and so on. Okay, let's not get into this too much, but I can see how this could refer to Putin. Maybe it could also refer to someone else, but yeah, especially in the line of the Soviet Union, and it makes sense. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamp and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Again, referring to the Soviet Union, obviously, because, Putin does make people worship the Soviet Union again. Google that. You'll find a lot of examples of him doing that. To worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of man. I don't know what this might be referring to. Maybe missiles or something along those lines. Maybe, with North Korea, it would make sense, right? Like with the missiles and so on. And he, especially nuclear missiles, they produce a lot of fire. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Again, this is typical for communism and for communist regimes. Anyone who doesn't believe in communism, it depends. Like, for example, in China during the Cultural Revolution, everyone who didn't believe in communism was killed, yes. And basically in all the other communist regimes at the height of their tyranny, anyone who didn't believe in communism, could be killed, yes. That's what, at the height of their tyranny, that's what all the communist regimes did. And that's what a lot of them do to this day. It's just that, obviously they like to cover that up. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Yeah. So again, this makes very much sense in light of communism, because, communism is more kind of the promise, a lot of every time I talk about a communist country, a lot of communists will attack me, say, no, Eastern Germany wasn't a communist country. No, the Soviet Union wasn't a communist country. No, China is not a true communist country. No, North Korea is not a true communist country. No, Cuba is not a true communist country. Because, we admit that the life in North Korea isn't so nice, but communism is supposed to be a great paradise, a paradise on earth for everyone. And everyone is free and equal and owns nothing but still has everything. That's communism. It's like a promise of a paradise on earth. Is a paradise on earth possible? No. So, surprise, surprise, it hasn't been possible to achieve that paradise on earth. That's just the promise they use to lure people in. So, no, of course, communism as this kind of paradise on earth hasn't been realized in over 100 years with countless millions of people dead, and you can take another 100 years and kill another 100 million people or more, and you still won't achieve it. It's just a false promise. It's not achievable. A paradise on earth is not achievable, obviously. But again, this is something, for someone who believes in God, it would be obvious that a paradise on earth is not achievable. For someone who is an atheist, which communists typically are, he might believe in such a false promise of a paradise on earth. So, all the communist regimes were actually socialist regimes. So, because communism is just a promise, and, and communists say, well, to achieve this great paradise on earth, we must first implement socialism. So all communist regimes actually became socialist countries. So it's socialism. What is socialism? Socialism is a state economy. In this case, it's an economy where the Communist Party has total control, over the economy. It's, the Communist Party controls the economy. Not the people control the economy. No private businesses are allowed. Every business is controlled by the Communist Party. It's a state-controlled, party-controlled economy. Which, of course, gives the Communist Party almost absolute power because you depend on the economy for everything. You depend on the economy for food. If the Communist Party controls the economy of the entire country, then without the Communist Party, you won't even get food. And that's exactly what all the communist regimes did. They can starve you to death very easily because you need them to buy and sell. They control the economy. Without the Communist Party allowing it, you wouldn't even be able to buy food because all the shops are controlled by the Communist Party. It's a state economy. So this is exactly what this is referring to. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave. So again, this is referring to the different classes, right? It controls all the classes. It makes, it controls all the classes because, other than the party elites, there aren't any rich people anymore anyway, because everyone is supposed to be equal, and all the capitalists have been sent off to a gulag, right? So there aren't any rich people anymore anyway. But, no matter what your class is, it's a state economy. The Communist Party has power over you and is controlling your business if you even have a business, which you probably won't. So he causes so all the classes. So because communism talks about classes, and here it talks about classes again. So this again, in light of communism, this makes sense. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. We already talked about that. The uniform of the Red Army, for instance, of any, but not just the Red Army, also of the People's Liberation Army in China, of any, communist uniform always has that 5-pointed star at the forehead. We already talked about that. Free and slave to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell, socialist economy, except one who has the mark. So only those who go along with the Communist Party can buy and sell because it's a socialist economy. It's a state-run economy. The Communist Party has control over the entire economy. Without the Communist Party, you cannot buy and sell. And that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. So we already talked about that. In a future segment, I might talk some more about the man. Obviously, this is going to refer to a communist dictator. And we can talk about that some more in a future segment. But this would be getting too long. So if you want to see that, let me know, and then I'll make another in-depth video talking about the man.